welcome to my final update for our low spend challenge of 2024. I'm going to go over all of our spending for the past 2 months, as well as a recap of our spending for the whole year. I have been doing these updates about every 2 months since I started this challenge this year in order to keep myself accountable. And I think it's actually helped because anytime I want to make a purchase that I don't need to be making, I think about how I'm going to have to come on here and say, oh, well, I spent money in this no spend category. And it's definitely kept me from overspending and buying things that I didn't need. As a recap, we started this challenge at the beginning of 2024 because we really wanted to focus on saving and spending intentionally, mostly because my income was going to be reduced for the beginning of the year because of taking unpaid maternity leave. Also, we had no idea how expensive our daughter was going to be. You always hear everywhere how expensive it is to have a baby, and so we really wanted to be very intentional with our purchases for the year and not overspend on things that we didn't need. So we started this challenge in order to really keep track of our spending and buy intentionally. And then we also had a huge expense at the beginning of the year. If you're new here, we had to replace our roof, and that was really expensive, way more than we had expected it to be. And so we had been saving like crazy throughout the year after we got that done because we needed to pay that no interest loan off before the interest started accruing, because I think it's like at a 20% interest rate. So we drastically had to cut our spending even more than I had originally intended with this low spend challenge. Because we had to reach that savings goal. We also, in addition to cutting our spending, we also reduced our retirement account savings in order to focus on paying for the roof. But this month, I'm going to go over our spending. Obviously, we continued spending in our necessities, so all of our bills. We have some debts that we are still paying our minimum payments on: the mortgage, the truck, my retirement account loan, and my husband's student loans. So those are 4 debts that we were paying just the minimums on all year long. And of course, that is allowed in a low spend challenge. If you're interested in doing a low spend challenge in 2025, I think that I'm going to be doing this again. I'm kind of not really a big spender anyway, and I think that this has made me even less of a spender. But you can follow along with me as I do this. If you're interested in seeing regular updates from me on my 2025 progress, then let me know in the comments. I know that I enjoy holding myself accountable in this way by making these videos. But if it's not something you want to see, then I won't subject you to it. But if you do want to see it, then let me know, and I will definitely make sure to prioritize these types of videos in the future. I also do, at the end of every month, a daily spending vlog where I have like 1-minute clips of my spending every single day that I spend money. So if you're interested in those, you can check those out. They're also in my low spend playlist. And I may continue doing those in the new year too, because I find those to be kind of fun and also holding me accountable, because I don't want to get on the camera every single day and explain my spending if it was a little bit frivolous. We pay our debts, we pay our fixed expenses. This is utilities, car insurance, internet, daycare, We don't really have any other subscriptions. The only subscription I have is to Acorns, which is my after-tax brokerage account. I pay just $1 a month to keep that active, and I contribute to that like $5 to $10 a month. It's not a huge amount, but just to keep it active for if I ever decide that I want to begin contributing more to that in the future, I still will have that available. I'm just looking at our expenses categories. I think that's it for our fixed expenses, our allowable expenses, and obviously we are going to spend on groceries, our car and car maintenance, any gifts that we have to buy for other people, and I mean half as in loosely have to buy. We purchase for our nieces and nephews when we go to their birthday parties and for Christmas, but technically we don't have to buy those, but we choose to. And we don't really buy gifts for each other, and my daughter is still too young to really realize about gift giving, so we haven't really bought her any gifts. But she gets gifts from other people, so we don't really buy for her, and my husband and I don't really buy for each other. That may change in 2025 because we may not be so strict with our low spend, so we'll see. Fortunately, my birthday comes before my husband's, so I know how much to spend on him based on what he spent on me. So, and then we also spend on pets because I have 2 rabbits, and this is just for their necessary things. So I buy them food, I buy them hay, I buy them litter, and I take them to the vet. And so that's an allowable expense. And then health, we spend on our health when we have doctor's appointments and we need like cold medicine and stuff. And then for my daughter, we spend on her really only clothes when she outgrows them. She is just over a year now, and she's been in cloth diapers, so we haven't had to make purchases for diapers or formula. She's been breastfed. She's eating solid foods now, so the only thing we really buy for her is clothes when she outgrows them, and we get all of her clothes at the thrift store, so they're really cheap. We have a thrift store that we like to go to. It's not a for-profit one, so they have really, really reasonable prices. Usually her clothes are less than $2 a piece, so that's really nice. So we don't really spend very much on her, but when we need to spend on her, we will spend on her. And then also for paying for our phone service, I don't count that, that's not counted as a fixed expense because we pay for that annually. But I think those are the allowable expenses, so I'm just going to get into how much we've spent. Oh, and also home maintenance, if we have to fix anything around the house, or upkeep. I know, like we have a swimming pool, so we buy like chlorine and stuff for that. We had to replace our washing machine this past year, so that is also an expense that goes into home. So these are like necessary things, not like decorations and stuff, because my house doesn't have any decorations. I have some plants, but they're old. I don't buy new plants. So I guess that's in my no spend category. A lot of my plants are succulents, so they all propagate on their own. Or like this one, my spider plant, it has many babies. I could have 7 more plants if I wanted 7 more plants. So let's get into our categories, how much I've spent. So I mentioned home maintenance. That is allowed, but we didn't spend anything in November or December for home maintenance, which is quite crazy because over the year we spent $8,000. $7,959.44 to be exact on home maintenance. So some of this at the beginning of the year was working on my daughter's nursery, buying like baseboards, and I think we had to buy a door, but and then we also had some pool expenses this summer, and again we replaced the washing machine. So we spent almost $8,000 on home maintenance this year, but in the past 2 months we didn't spend any. So yay. For groceries, this was actually, we spent a lot in November and not so much in December. So overall, these past 2 months, we spent $723 in groceries. If you've seen any of my budgeting videos, then I use sinking funds for everything. And groceries is one of those that we absolutely need a sinking fund, because in November we spent over $500, and then in December it was just over $200. So sometimes we make like big bulk purchases of lots of things, lots of dried beans, lots of frozen vegetables, and then other months, because we have all of those bulk things, we're just buying like tofu and soy milk and bananas or something. Like very, very minimal. I think December was a very minimal month. We didn't spend very much because we had bought so much stuff in November. Oh, so for the entire year, we spent $4,169.69 on groceries, which was, if you see my goal recap, it was like exactly what I had set out as my goal for the year, was to spend under $4,200, and we did that. And if you've seen any of my updates for the low spend year, you know that groceries are also very difficult for me to stick to the budget. I really like to just buy a lot of things. I probably go to the grocery store hungry every time, even if I have a list. I still buy, if I see something on sale, I'll buy it. And then I did go to the grocery outlet a lot this year. I guess we kind of just discovered it for the first time this year, the grocery outlet. If you haven't heard of it, it's like, some things are not good deals at all, but they have like super clearance things. It's like things that are about to expire, and you can get them for less than $1. Things that are typically like $10 or something, so like 90% off. So we discovered the grocery outlet this year, and it has not been good for us. We've been buying many things that we didn't need for that reason. But I could argue that it's also saved us money. So we buy a lot of our plant milk there, where if you've seen grocery store prices for like oat milk, it's more than $5, and we can usually get it there for less than $1. So anyway, groceries, typically a problem for us, but we actually did stick to our basically our annual budget for them this year. And these past 2 months, our spending was up from the 2 previous months, but we still did pretty good. And now that my daughter eats real food, we spend a little bit more in groceries. We also only buy organic, so that's part of why our grocery budget is pretty expensive, because like the 4-pound bag of organic frozen broccoli is almost twice as much as the non-organic one. So yeah, these past 2 months were a little bit more than the previous 2 months, but we're still overall for the year under budget. So we'll move on to baby. This month, I think I bought her 2 pairs of pants from the thrift store, and that was it. That was in November. It was $2.62. I didn't spend anything on her in December, which you might be like, what? You didn't buy her any Christmas presents? No, I didn't buy her any Christmas presents. She's 14 months old at Christmas, and her family bought her Christmas presents. She didn't get anything from us. But for the whole year, $2,750 on her, and a lot of that was medical bills. So when she was born in October of 2023, we got the bills in 2024, and we used her sinking fund for that. We had kind of prepared for it, but we also had no idea how much her bills were going to be, so we ended up going like way over what we budgeted because we had no idea. Having a baby is expensive, especially if you have a high deductible plan. But fortunately, we were able to pay for it without taking on any debt. So now for car and gas, this is mostly just gas for my car. My husband pays for his gas from his own personal spending, and so I don't track that. In November, I filled up my tank once, and then in December, I filled it up twice, plus I got an oil change, and I had to do my emissions inspection. So in November, I spent $26.35 on a tank of gas, and then in December, I spent $131.56. So that was a total over the 2 months of $157.91. And my gas is so low because I drive a plug-in hybrid. So you would expect our home electricity to be a little bit more, but it's not really. It's probably an extra $20 or $40 a month in electricity to charge my car. So not that bad because our electricity is under $200 anyway, and we have a pretty big house. But for the year, we ended up spending $2,351.86 on cars, and this was under budget for the entire year, but a big part of why we were under budget was because my husband decided halfway through the year to use his personal spending to pay for his gas. He uses a lot of gas, even though he drives a hybrid. Also, his gas mileage isn't as good, and he drives more than I do. His work is a little bit farther away, so he spends a lot more in gas. Another one of our allowable categories is pets. I bought our rabbits food in November, and I didn't spend anything on them in December. So that was $27.55, which is not bad. And I think it's the exact same that we spent in the previous 2 months because I buy food for them every other month, basically. So for the year, we spent $427.71 on the rabbits, and that was just about what we were expecting to pay. They have their annual vet appointment in like January or February, so we will be expecting to be paying more for them coming soon. And so next for our allowable expenses was health, and it looks like we spent negative in this category because we were getting a lot of things reimbursed from the FSA. I had an FSA for work, so that was using tax advantage money for health expenses, and I ended up using up the rest of the FSA funds this month, so that was $108.80. And I reimbursed the health category. So it looks like we were negative $8.63 in health spending because it was all reimbursed. For the year, we spent $130.51 above and beyond our FSA, and our FSA was $480. So what's that? $500, $610 of health spending for the year. So I think that's it for our like allowable expenses. Oh, we have gifts. We spent a lot on gifts with these last 2 months being the holidays, and my husband's brother's kids have their birthdays do like a joint birthday party in November, and then we have Christmas for those nieces and nephews, and also on my side of the family. So in November we spent $117 on gifts, and then in December we spent $319 on gifts. So by far spending $436.40 on gifts in these past 2 months. That's kind of a lot, and that is like probably 90% of our gift spending for the entire year. Because overall for the year we spent $539.44 on gifts. And like the other gift spending that we did was just for my niece's birthdays that we went to over the summer. So quite a bit of gift spending this year. But as I said, it's allowable. We didn't go overboard on like spending for each other or anything, and we didn't go into debt for gifts. So as long as we can afford it, then that's what we're doing. So now moving on to our no spend categories. I think I'm happy to report that we didn't spend in any of these things. I think November and December were very busy months that we really didn't go out at all. I mean, we like even saved our gift buying till the last minute because we were just so busy and just didn't have time to go out shopping. So we didn't buy anything for ourselves. I think, as I said, I spent $2.62 on my daughter at the thrift store, and like we didn't even buy anything else at the thrift store. Like, so personal spending was $0 each month. For the year it was $35.33. I don't remember which month I spent that in, but we did really good in our personal spending this year. And this is just my personal spending, and clothing. Clothing and personal is the category that I call it in my budgets. I've mentioned this, I don't know how many times, but my husband, he keeps 15% of his pay to spend however he wants, and I don't track it at all. So if he has personal spending from that's fine. But for me, it was $0 for these past 2 months. And then travel and entertainment, we didn't travel, so $0 in the past 2 months. The traveling that we did this year, part of it was paid in advance, so we went camping and paid in advance, and we ended up getting refunded for not staying as long as we had originally paid for. And then we also traveled to see my grandparents actually twice this year, but because we just drove up there and stayed with them, we didn't have to pay for anything. And then restaurants is our last no spend category, and we didn't spend any in November or December. You would think, like, typically with being how busy that we were, that we would just like grab takeout or something, but we didn't even do that. It's actually less convenient, I think, to get takeout than it is to just cook at home. Although there was a time that I was coming home late from work with my daughter, and it was way past her dinner time, and I was like, we could just stop and get her something to eat at her dinner time and then get home and put her to bed. But instead, like, I drove the extra half hour to take her home and feed her when we got home. So her dinner was delayed by a half hour, but we didn't have to spend any on eating out. So for the year for restaurants, we only spent $52.68, which was really good. I think we only got takeout once, and I think it was for my husband's birthday. That's what I treated him to for his birthday. And other than that, like, that's all of our spending. I think I typically mention how many times we go to the grocery store because grocery spending is like our biggest problem area. So let me count that up for you. In November, we went to the grocery store 15 times, which is probably one of the highest amounts of times that we went to the grocery store. Most of those trips are like really small trips, like less than $10, but it still adds up when you're going 15 times. And then we went to the grocery store 11 times in December, which is a little bit more typical. So, I mean, that's like twice a week going to the grocery store, which is probably not very efficient, but it's like going to a bunch of different grocery stores because we like to buy different things at different grocery stores, which sometimes saves us money, but other times I think we're buying things that we don't need. So I think overall for our low spend year, we did pretty well. Our total spending for the entire year on these variable categories was $19,729.88. So spending less than $20,000 in a year, I think is pretty good. I mean, that isn't counting our like fixed expenses and debt payments. But I think for a family of three, it's not too bad. Let me know in the comments if you know how much you've spent in a year on your variable expenses, or if you think what we spend is really high or if it's pretty reasonable. Our fixed expenses, which is like our utilities, car insurance, internet, and daycare, is about $14,000. And then when you add in our debt payments, it's $51,000. So because our debt payments are really high, we really do need to keep our fixed expenses low. Because, I mean, our debt payments by themselves is more than all of our other spending. And that's pretty crazy. So I think we're doing pretty good at reducing our monthly spending. With this low buy challenge, it's definitely helped me think a lot before I spend. I still struggle with the grocery purchases, as I mentioned, but a lot of the other categories I think we're doing really well in. And it definitely has become easier throughout the year. I know at the beginning of the year I was definitely struggling a lot more, especially with grocery purchases, because part of it was because I had a lot of free time with being off work on parental leave, that I was able to go to the grocery store and the thrift store kind of for fun, just something to do. I spent a lot more money at the beginning of the year for that reason. And so I think the moral is don't go to the store if you don't want to spend money. So it's probably pretty obvious. Not many people are very good at just window shopping. When you go and you see a lot of things that are tempting, then it's kind of hard. But if you watched this far, let me know in the comments if you're doing a low spend year in 2025, and if you'd like to see more of these kinds of updates for my low spend challenge in 2025. I think it's going to be a little bit less strict, so there might be more spending going on, although we do have some debt payment goals that we are really trying to hit. So keeping our spending low to about the same amount as this year will be super helpful with that. Hopefully we won't have as many expenses related to our daughter, or health because we've paid all the hospital bills, and that was a big part of our spending this year. So if you're interested in seeing more of our family's journey towards debt repayment and financial independence, then please hit subscribe because I would love to have you follow along. Thank you for being here.